Hello and welcome to the FCICA webinar series. Thank you for joining us. This webinar will be recorded. The recorded session will be housed on the FCICA Member Center and this educational portal. Mark your calendars for the upcoming 2021 Annual Convention and Commercial Flooring Trade Show in Austin, Texas, September 13 through 15. Registration is still open. Visit fcica.com for more information. FCICA's safety book, Start with Safety, is available electronically, free to members, and printed versions are available for $185. The safety book is an essential item to have in your office and on every job site. Purchase it on FCICA's website today. Thank you for joining us for Digital Print, an Emerging Medium. We are pleased to introduce our presenter, Bill Treiber, the Technical Sales and Education Manager for Artistic Finishes. Bill began his career in the lumber industry and built a strong sales record in wood flooring distribution for over 15 years before joining Artistic Finishes in 2009. His experience and in-depth knowledge is used to assist Artistic Finishes customers with all of their questions relating to the flooring industry. Look for Bill on all of the technical data material, as well as trade magazine articles and association webinars. Welcome, Bill. We're excited to have you. I'm going to turn the controls over to you.
Good morning and welcome. I really feel always honored when I come on to a FCICA webinar. This particular one here being an educational format and something fairly new to the industry, that being digital print, has always been something in the back of, I think, a lot of the futuristic product approaches towards particularly the vinyl portion of the industry, where we refer to it as the multi-layer flooring portion. Now, a lot of what I will speak about today will be related to different products that would go with the different floors, as well as the application that will pertain to how it can best be served in the industry. And hopefully we'll be able to answer some of your questions should you have any. At any time, just send them in on the left-hand side in the Q&A listing there. I'll try to work them in as we go. This is a fairly new niche in the industry, and so questions should be abound. We'll look at the history, a little bit of how it all got started, the areas of use that have come into play since its origins. We're going to talk a lot about color and light source and how colors are affected by light sources and the different types of lighting there is, and of course how it applies to the industry, and do some brief summaries for you. So in the beginning, many of us became dependent on digital print and other related printing technologies in modern days. Have been curious about the origin of digital printing, the endeavors of Graham Nash and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the famous rock group that of the 70s. They developed digital printing is really where he, being Graham Nash, started to use digital photography for his, documentation of their concerts and what have you. As you can read below there, needed to produce the colors so that they could be seen on his computer screen when computers were first starting to take off. And this was a method with which he discovered the iris printer. It's a continuous tone, and through a lot of trial and error with inkjet models being used for pre-press proof, he wanted his own and decided to invest $126,000 of his digital photography for his digital photography. And the results were amazing, and he managed to pay off his investment as he hosted art exhibits and used it for his own personal company, displaying critically acclaimed photos all over the world. It's kind of a neat beginning to now expanding technology. The digital print technology history developed over time to get us where we are now. The public and the publishing tool desktop, fine art devices, industrial pre-press proofing were used to create what we need. The progress of the evolution came as follows. First, we had to have a requirement of one-off reproduction and short runs by hand. The amount of product that could be run in small quantities is very critical in the flooring industry because of the fact that they may be only doing one job of one particular color or collection of maybe 8 different SKUs or colors. And so these are very small quantities that would be run, and the abilities to do that are more easily accomplished through digital print. The low-quality mimeographs and stenciling, all things of the past now, inline printing, magnetic tape, digital punch card storage of text, those were all things that were used in the past and really no longer come into play. Introductions of the digital color, Benny Landa, maybe you're familiar with the individual, introduced his ePrint 1000 digital press in 1993, and it brought a remarkable change in the industry. And the users were able to utilize this device for digital print color for their projects and made a big change in the industry. And the ePrint 1000 digital press came as a perfect solution for the people who needed viable and variable data printing and short runs again. It did not take much time for it to emerge as the top choice for this purpose and made a clear difference with the printing forms like lithograph printing. That's a process based on the fact that grease and water don't mix. The image is applied to a grain surface, traditionally stone, but now they usually use aluminum because of its ability to hold the product on better, using a greasy medium, such as a special greasy ink. It's called touche. It's French pronunciation, not touche, but touche. Crayons, pencils, lacquer, synthetic materials, all being used in the lithograph. Gravure printing is widely used processing method, often used to print large volumes of magazines and catalogs, still today. And letterpress printing is a process of relief printing text and image using a type of high bed press and movable. It's very, very versatile. Flexography is a roll feed web printing process for higher volumes. These all were initially used in the digital color world. As far as the direct digital print, the history to clothing began in the United States in 1996. The introduction first commercially available DTG printer named the Revolution, developed by the DIS of Bradenton in Florida, a company well known even today, and based on an invention by a fellow named Matthew Rahm. And Rahm had been working on direct digital print projects for many years and applied a patent in 1996. So, digital printing, direct digital printing, a method where printing an image is directly transferred from a printer onto a film, making this process highly flexible, environmentally friendly, and often high quality printing. The details and the abilities we'll talk about a little bit more when we get into pixels per inch, parts per inch. Films still used to include vinyl, PVC, papers. Majority of what we will be looking at when you see more and more companies go to digital print will be in the vinyl world. And the discrepancy between still a majority of floors putting on images on their existing vinyl floor, their manufactured floors, is that they are using a lot of vinyl paper, and they're not all directly digitally printed. In fact, very few of them are. They're doing a Photoshop of an image, and then they're transferring it and taking that to a paper, which they're snapshotting it onto, using it as the medium for the transfer. With direct digital print, it is actually created through many inkjets passing many times back and forth over the surface of the material. Artistic finishes, along with many other companies, are beginning to use this in the curve technologies, which means that the abilities to do transitions, reducers, T-molds, many other different forms of products for the world are available now and becoming more readily available. Your accessories to include treads and risers, eventually floor vents, registers, as well as all of the different profiles common to the flooring industry. IsoSport is kind of a technical term, but it was defined by its low processing times, used primarily in the flooring industry, highly flexible and thus highly suitable for very small numbers of batches, just-in-time production. It's also print on demand. No storage required. Product is being utilized and sent into the field shortly after production, with, of course, the option of having inventories. Low purchase costs for necessary equipment, very high image resolution, and low cost thanks to low inking, all benefits of digital printing. As far as the processes, there's the most common method would be a four-color process known as the Cy, Magenta, Yellow, Black, the CMYB, the DIPs that refer to those mentioned earlier, where you get into the ability to have clarity, much like a TV would have pixels. Printing has DPI, that being the dots per square inch. This affects the clarity of any subject and or pattern or design. Acceptable industry levels using 600 DPSI, and that's kind of a high-end mark. It's a measure per inch, so there's actually 600 dots per square inch. Which, there's a lot of dots in an inch. Let's take a little closer look. Talk a little bit about some of the different colors and how they react and relate to the remaining three. Magenta, as shown here on the fuchsia colored flowers, kind of a cross between rose and violet and halfway between red and blue. It's a very critical color. It gives the abilities for your blending to the darker reds, and as you will find out through the subtractive method, when you subtract magenta from the color sources available, it will bring out yellows, greens, reds, and black, as shown in the lower right-hand little diagram. yellow. Subtractive system will, in its absence, create blues, greens, blacks, and lighter blues. So the addition or subtraction of yellow is critical on the blue scheme of colors. And of course, black in a subtractive system being removed will accent the full spectrum of color, all of them combined. Knowing the light source is definitely going to be a key in affecting the ability to understand direct digital print. All light is measured in kelvins. An example, daylight is typically around 5,000 Kelvin. 5,000 Kelvin is a good light to be in when considering what we deal with in the industry. A south-facing structure with lots of windows, you're going to get a fairly high number of kelvins. Cool white ranges between 31 to 4,500 kelvins. Warm light is generally in the 2,000 to 3,000 range. When testing most floors, most products, you're going to try to be closer to the 5,000 Kelvin. But of course, as you can see, the warm lights in the homes are much lower range, so they're going to bring out a lot of different colors. But they are actually in lumens closer in range to the 4,500 range. Depending on where you are and the type and the quality of the light, your digital print will look slightly different. We should expand on this here in a little bit with some of the other slides coming. And products produced will geared to work best with white warm light, and that way, we're focusing in the industry on primarily residential lighting. Other light sources will be used, of course, with minimal color change. This, light rays are only visible rays to the naked eyes. White light is a visible light. It contains all of the colors shown here in the spectrum. As far as white light, visible light is very high energy light. You can see where it falls in between the ultraviolet rays and the infrared rays. As far as your lighting that you have outside and in full visible, daylight. If you're introducing ultraviolet ray, you're going to offset the spectrum, and you're going to start seeing a lot more magentas, blues, violets, greens, those kinds of colors. If you're outside in bright light, where you have more ultraviolet rays, creating the light concern from a overall Kelvin standpoint being very high in some cases, you're going to have much more reds, yellows, and oranges. In the print world with direct print, we have a term that's referred to as metamerism, and this occurrence is a phenomenon that occurs when two colors appear to match under one lighting condition, but not when exposed to different light sources or degrees of light. A metameric match, these are quite common, especially in near neutral colors like grays, whites, and dark colors like these. These darker ended lower lights. Metamerism is perceived matching of color with different non-matching spectrum power distribution. It's a big fancy term for saying that your eyes can only determine what is being seen based on the color available through the lighting and how it is projected from the products that have been basically colored with ink. Colors that match this way are called metamers. And a special power distribution describes a proportion of a total light given off, emitted or transferred to a media like a vinyl, composite, by a color sample at each visible wavelength. It determines the complete information of the light coming from the sample. This next slide will show you that if you have a dark light, you can see how much more orange comes in. This being a light that is a soft white. Here being closer to a fluorescent light on the left, and it just shows you the different depictions from the light source and what it will mean in terms of the colors that are perceived. And here's a good example of that. Your northern skylight will bring out more of the blues and the greens. A tungsten bulb will bring out very high-end reds and yellows, where on the low end, very little of the purples and blues. Fluorescents can be scattered. They tend to dwarf a lot of the color that a full spectrum, daylight would be able to show you. As you can see, the north sky daylight versus a fluorescent light is totally different in the amount of colors that you're going to see in objects. So, some of the different perspectives there. Notice the lampshade coming off of the tungsten bulb and how diffused and skewed the lighting is there, versus an office with fluorescent lighting, which just tends to wash out or diminish many of the colors, leaving lots of greens and occasional dark contrasts in colors. So the human eye, ironically, only has 3 color receptors, which means that all colors are reduced to really 3 sensory qualities. And these 3 are accumulative in that we have ranges that you perceive the objects with. In other words, the ranges are closely related and equate to the number of kelvins. Low range we're going to consider in the 1,000 to 3,500, mid-range 3,500 to 4,100, which we deal with primarily indoors, and then high range, which would be daylight outside and at the 5,000 level for the most part, 4,100 up if you're looking at a cloudy day or what have you. This metamerism will occur then because of the energy from a broad range of light across all the wavelengths, which can be produced in an equivalent receptor response in the eye, and the same tristimulus values, fancy word for eye perception and color sensation, interpretation with our minds. In color science, the set of sensory spectral sensitivity curves is numerically represented by color matching functions, which is what we've just shown here. It's kind of in what we were looking at back here. So, with that, we clearly define the different ranges. The light rays are the only visible rays to the naked eye. White light is visible. It contains all of the colors of the visible full light spectrum, the rainbow, if you will. And looking at multiple floor lines, we've seen more and more coming on the markets weekly. Here's a good example from Forbo, a Canadian-based firm, where they have used different digitally printed external vinyl, giving them tremendous detail and ability to show a floor off with great clarity and a rainbow of colors. Let your imagination run wild. There really is no limits to items that can be photoshopped and then converted into digital print. This is an example of something you might see when flying across Nebraska or Kansas or anywhere where there's a large number of agricultural farms with a river running through it. All done in vinyl. The perfect finish every time, and that pretty much goes with the technologies of digital print and all of the profiles and floors that are included in it. In profiles we look at stair nosings, T-molds, reducers, square nosings, wall base, and quarter round. Be more than happy to elaborate on any of those. The abilities for all the different floors in the industry to be able to go from really 2 millimeter, it's pretty much about the thinnest that we see, but I know there's probably somebody out there with a 1.5 millimeter floor, up to the laminates that are being made today in the 1/2 inch thick, right around the 12.3 millimeters, a few of them reaching even up to 15 millimeters. And don't be surprised to see thicker floors in the future being made with vinyl as well. The composites materials today just continue to get more and more sophisticated, and I think that the future will bode for that based on available resources and technology increases. There's a good example of a tile floor with tile transitions blended in where you can't really see them, but the technology to make tile looks on vinyl certainly has arrived with the digital print technologies today. So again, some of the profiles that we look at here in the industry, all the way up to 15 millimeters, overlapping as well as flush stair nosings, certainly a big trend today. And we have a good example of the wood grain, most popular patterns, if you will. Most of the floors today that you look at are really just pictures of existing floors. There's no question that ability to blend to those with accessories has always been a challenge to the industry, as it is 99% of the manufacturers of flooring are still making flooring, and they leave the accessories to the accessories companies. And so this will hopefully bridge that gap and give the abilities to have better blends and higher qualities in performance as well as in aesthetics. There's a discussion here about new products. New profiles are coming into play all the time, certainly in the WPCs, SPCs, what have you, in stair nosing always being one of the most challenged profiles in the industry. Methods for installation have continued to get more and more sophisticated, in the addition of the different adhesives when you're dealing with moisture in the flooring industry, which is a common concern. You're looking for an adhesive that is antimicrobial has the ability to, not create any molds and mildews, yet bond to and cure to just about every surface imaginable. Wood, any of the wood composites, plastic, metal, styrofoam, concrete, whether it's been cured or not. These are products in the MS line of adhesives, which are designed really for individual stick application. And the MS stands for modified silane. It's a zero VOC, very user-friendly adhesive with a high green grab, giving a tremendous advantage over any of the mechanical fasteners. And mechanical fasteners today are not really recommended with anything in the vinyl world when it comes to particularly digitally printed products, where you're going to damage the surface wear layers with any penetrations mechanically. The adhesives gives you that one-up leg for a final best-looking aesthetic. To summarize a few things, we're only looking at an industry that's less than a quarter of a century old, so it's very, very green in those regards. The advances are leaps and bounds from one year to the next right now. Now you're seeing it in the flooring industry by manufacturers on an increasingly used basis, and it behooves you not to find out who those companies are, because the performance with those products will be long-lasting, as it does not succumb to the rays that change the colors that used to be part of the initial and still are part of some of the manufacturers' products that are not using digital print, where ultraviolet rays are a much bigger concern. Of course, the finished products produced, their capabilities are endless. And the colors used with CMYB, subtractive process, with a white background is really quite endless as well. Commonly used as the white background, this subtractive process where you have all the colors of the spectrum. The subtractive process with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black is by far superior. And of course, the white background being from the vinyls that are being produced. Of course, lighting does affect the color, and that's important to know that, and you need to have an understanding and become familiar with the word metamerism, so that if you know what your lighting sources are going to be, or you can control them or change them for products to maintain the colors that your customers are perceiving, whether it's in showrooms where you've got some daylight, but maybe you've got fluorescent lights and you want to change those out to warm light. Incandescent light can make a big difference for when the product is in the final user's dwellings. The future is bright, and we're all excited to know that it's only going to get busier. The growth in the vinyl industry has doubled since its origins. When I say origin, I'm not talking about the original products, so to speak, from one manufacturer, but really just in the last 2.5 to 3 years, when we had to start naming the industries with vinyl products into the multi-layer flooring category of the industry, due to the introduction of the SPCs, the stone plastic composites, the integrated rigid vinyl cores, which are combining increased levels of stone with polymers, to the introduction of the impregnated wood composite materials, the WPCs, and of course, we're looking at now acrylic impregnated composites, all still being pretty much finished with a vinyl wrap, and will continue to until a better product, I suppose, or process is developed. And with that, I take any last questions, but do thank you. There's more information available for this webinar at my company, there with the listing of the email site, www.artisticfinishes. I do thank you all for attendance today. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Bill. If there's anybody from the audience that has a question for Bill, please enter it in the Q&A now. We'll wait just a moment. Okay. Bill, nobody has entered any questions so far. So, and I think they've had an opportunity. So if there are no questions from the audience today, then on behalf of FCICA, thank you so much, Bill, for presenting today's webinar. Sims, you may now navigate to the submit. Oops, sorry, Bill. Sims may now navigate to the Submit Credit tab to receive credit. Please note that you must be signed into the educational platform for this feature to work. If you have any issues, please let us know. So again, thank you so much, Bill. This is the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.